It's great to see your console has been set up and you're ready for your next step. In this video tutorial, Chris will show you how to set up your tours and rate types.
Okay, so we're going to start looking at setting up our rates and our tours. Now please note, if you are using a channel partner, whether that is ResD or a tour management system which connects to the Live-In group, please contact Bookeasy Support Direct. You do not need to manually set up your product in Bookeasy. The connection setup will be done by the Bookeasy team for these operators. Please note that your products must be set up in either ResD or Live-In and connected to the booking agent or supplier as negotiated rates. Bookeasy is unable to do this on your behalf. Please contact ResD or the Live-In group. So now it's time to log into your console and let's get started in setting up the rates. So now that we are logged into our console, there are two areas we need to address. And the first step is to set up our rate types. So we'll click on rate types and it will bring up a generic template for you. And this is where you will be setting up your different rate types which will be available to your tour products. Please note that not all rates have to be activated, but it is a good idea to set up all rates in use. In this case, I do have an adult, a child, an infant, a pensioner and a student rate. I'm just going to remove the group rate for a moment. And each of these rates have been set up as active. I'm going to set up a family rate, so I'll click on add a new rate type and I will call it family. And the family rate is made up of 2 adults and 2 children. And this rate will be active. This means that should 2 adults and 2 children go to make a booking, it will display the family rate if it works out to be cheaper than 2 times adult plus 2 times children. You can increase the family rate as well. For example, if your family will include up to 6 people, we can always change the notation to say family of 4. Then we can repeat the process. So a family of 5 will be made up of 2 adults and 3 children, remembering to make it active. And similarly, a family of 6 is made up of 2 adults and 4 children. There is no reason when we're setting up the tours that the rate may be the same. The last rate I'm going to show you is where you may decide to do a 2-for-1 deal, but this is only done for bookings via visitor centre staff. So we'll set up a new rate type. We will call it the 2-for-1 deal, which means it's going to be applicable for 2 adults. We will make it active, but in this case, I'm also going to tick internal only, which means this rate type is not available for any online bookings. It will only be available for face-to-face bookings. And remembering to save my work. So the rate types have been set up. You'll notice that the total column has been updated to reflect the total number of people involved. Once your rates are set up, the next step is to start setting up your product where you will be able to relate the rate types as appropriate. So we'll go back to the main menu and you'll find your tours are under tour tickets. You will also find it under setup if you click on tours. So we're now on our tour setup page and at the moment we have no products, so we are going to be starting from scratch. So the first thing we're going to do is click on where it says add a new tour. And although a lot of the fields are self-explanatory, I will go through each one. So the first thing to do is to give your tour a name. This name will appear online, plus for internal bookings and on itineraries. And underneath you've got the ability to set up to 3 tour types. So in this case, it is going to be a wilderness tour. If you find that you do not have an appropriate selection, please contact your booking centre direct and they will be able to amend the drop-down list for you. The active button, you'll have this tick if your tour is available for bookings. So if at any time you untick it, it just means you will be archiving this tour. The maximum capacity is the maximum number of seats per departure. So if this tour was to operate twice per day, the maximum capacity would be 15 on each departure. Where it says one rate, I will be covering that in a later example. Then below that we have the rack rates, and this is where we will be setting up our default rates. So for this tour we have an adult rate of $150, a child rate of $90, a concession rate of $135, infants are free of charge, and a family of 4 is $390. Whenever you do put in rate prices, just make sure you do activate rates as appropriate, which includes in this case infants being free of charge. Although I do have a 2-for-1 deal and I do have families of 5, etc. appearing on this screen, they are not relevant to this tour, hence the rate will be left as 0 and they will be inactive. If we scroll further down, this is where we've got our occurrences, and we've got a couple of scenarios. The first one is your tour will run at a set time or at multiple set times in a day. The second situation is where your tour is flexible on timings, maybe due to weather circumstances, sunset, etc., etc. But for this example, this tour runs twice a day. There is a 9 a.m. tour. There is also a 3 p.m. tour. Now each tour is 3 hours in length. And where it says append tour times, that just means you've got the ability to put the time in brackets after the name of the tour on itineraries. In this case, the all day will be left blank. I will show that in the next example. The next fields are self-explanatory, so you've got the ability to put in a full description of the tour. So once the description has been put in, you can continue by explaining what the client will need to bring with them. If you do have any notes or special needs which are applicable to this tour only, they may be put in this field. For example, if you want to explain that the tour includes non-alcoholic beverages only, etc. The pickup point is utilised if the tour has a set pickup location where the client will need to make their way to. If you give an option of pickup locations, that will be covered in the area of booking questions. The final field on this screen is where you have the ability to override your normal cancellation policy with a specialised one just for this tour. So looking at this tour, it has been set up as a 3-hour tour. There will be 2 occurrences, one departure at 9 a.m, one departure at 3 p.m, and both have a capacity of 15. There are 3 other tabs at the top of this screen which we will go through as well. So we'll click on Advanced Options, and this is where you can set the status of the tour as well. For example, is this tour instant confirmation or is it on request? This field does override the setting of your business in general. So for this tour, we are going to put it as on request. You also have the ability to say whether this tour is only available for internal bookings. We do have some fields here where you've got the ability to set minimum numbers to include infants in the passenger count. And as another example, unlimited passengers is where you could do group bookings and only one availability would be removed. You do have the ability to set up a booking deadline. In this case, bookings will stop 1 day prior to the commencement of each tour. In addition, if I was to select this button, if a booking is made with more than one person, the names of each person must be entered at the time of booking. Campaigns and packages will be covered in a later video tutorial. So I can also go up to date restrictions and I can set up my calendar. So this one has already been set up to cover the present date, but I am going to set this up to only apply for the current year. So I have got my start date and end date and the available days. In this case, I'm going to deselect Monday as this tour operates every day of the week except Monday. I'm going to leave pick up and drop off locations as I have a preference to cover that in the booking questions area. So now I'll save my tour and you'll notice it now appears in the list. So we've got the Outback Horse Wrangling Experience. If you wish to view this tour, just select on the name and you'll see that all of your fields do appear. The second tour I'm going to look at is where the time is more flexible, hence the departure time depends on weather conditions, etc. So rather than set up a new tour, I am going to copy an existing tour and utilize the shell, and we can update the name. So in this case, we do have a sunset horse whispering and there will be a picnic. So I'm going to keep it as a wilderness tour. And I'm going to add in a food tour. This tour does have a reduced capacity of 10 and I can update my rates. So we'll look at the rates for this tour. Because I am copying one, I will need to override any fields which appear. So in this case, the adult price is $200. There is no pensioner or concession price, so I am going to repeat the adult price to reflect that, and the child price is 50% of the adult price. I do not offer a family rate for this tour. So I've just removed one of the occurrence, and in this case, this tour is flexible, so I am going to tick the button that says all day, and I'm going to put in a generic start time for indicative reasons, and similarly for the cutoff time. I will update my content. So we've updated our content, including any information for the client to bring. And in this case, I put in a special note to say that please ensure any dietary requirements are requested at the time of booking. You can save at this stage, but it is best to go up and check your advanced options. This tour is also on request, must be booked 1 day in advance. But this tour only operates on a Monday, so I'll select Monday only before I save my changes. So I now have 2 tours that have been set up. What I'm going to show you now is the one-way rate scenario, which is generally used for either charter tours, private groups, or for vehicle hire. So we are going to copy the Sunset Horse Whispering, but we're going to change the name to Exclusive Group. The implication here that this is to allow an exclusive group booking, so if 5 people were to book, no other people would be involved. In this case, I am going to keep the maximum capacity of 10. However, I am setting up a set rate irrespective of how many people book. So where it says one rate, I will select one rate, and this tour is going to be $1,900. Irrelevant of the number of people who book. So if one person books, it is $1,900. If 5 people book, it is $1,900, etc. The other fields are set up as per normal protocols. In this case, I am going to explain that this is an exclusive tour. And this tour operates on Friday and Sundays only. So our 3 tours have now been set up, plus your applicable rates have been linked to each tour. Our next video tutorial will be covering the area where you will be editing your rates.